Alright, so you guys interested in just a crankshaft installation video? I'm not going to spend much time with it. There's not that much to talk about. Some very, very important key things you have to remember, and it applies to any V8, any engine. I mean, it could be a Briggs and Stratton. I mean, anyway, not really. Car engine. Let me just cut to the chase here. So I'm going to take my camera off of my stand so I can get in and zoom in on some of this stuff. But so everything's clean. Everything. I've done some of the bearing installation already, but I want to point out some things for those of you that just have not seen this before. You see these holes here? Okay, that is something right there is one with no bearing in it. Okay, that's the center bearing journal, or whatever you want to call it, and that takes a special kind of a bearing. It takes one that's got these sides. That right there. That is always in the center. It's a thrust bearing, they call it, and the reason they call it that is because it keeps the crankshaft from walking back and forth. The other bearings don't have that feature. They're just straight up and down. Okay, there's the center one again. But if you notice, all of them have a slot for the oil to come through there. That's what that hole is for. And you cannot mix those up, with the type that the cap has. Doesn't have a hole, okay? See, it doesn't have a hole. And, it's a brand new bearing, and it doesn't have a hole because the oil doesn't go through the cap. It comes through the block. I wanted you to see also that you can read, well, if it'll get into focus there. Oh boy, that thing's not going to focus. Well, if you look right in this area, it'll say standard. I don't know why it's not focusing. All right, I'm sorry that it's blurry. I guess it's too small for this cheap camera, but it'll say STD, and that's not what, what everybody thinks of. No, it's STD is standard size, and that's what this is, standard size. The crankshaft is laying right here, and it has not been turned down. It's simply been polished at the machine shop. So it's ready to go in. But I'm going to do a plastic gauge test. So so what happens is, you get all your bearings in place. You notice these little tabs right there. They're all on this side on this engine. See, there's one without the bearing in it. I'm going to put it in there. And there's another one. And there's another one. So all your tabs are in place. The bearing has a little place on it right there. If it'll just focus. See that little thing right there? That. Yeah. So that has to go in place. Let's just go ahead and put it in. So I take my finger and I go like that. Make sure nothing's there. Same with the back of the bearing. Nothing, no, you want this thing to set nice and flat. Nothing there. It's brand new right out of the package. And you take it and make sure your tabs are right. See? Get ready. And I usually take two hands, but I'm holding this camera. It's okay. And I push it down in place. See? It fits pretty snug in that block. You want that thing flat right across there, okay? Same on this side. Nice and flat. It may even could go a little more. Okay? You don't want to take a screwdriver, you don't want to take anything and tap on that, because you'll distort this metal, this soft, like aluminum metal. You absolutely do not want to be tapping on these things to get them in place. You have to use your fingers, because your fingers won't hurt them. So again, oil hole. Oil hole. Check this stuff a bunch of times as you're doing it, so you don't end up screwing up, you know. All right, so I mean, so this one is the rear one. Also, the rear main seal goes in here. That's going to be another video after I do the plastic gauge test. And I am going to put oil up here because these bearings are not coming out, and I don't want to lay that crank in there with no oil. But I'm not going to turn it because it'll mess up my plastic gauge test. So I just wanted to show this video, you know, what it looks like in here, and how this goes together. So that's really what this video is about. Just how to put your bearings in, how they look when they're in place, how it looks when there's no bearing in the engine, like this one. And this one's ready for a bearing, but this is the wrong bearing. That's not going in there. I need the one over there in the package that's got the hole in it, because you do not want to block this hole. Do not block any holes. Nope. Catastrophic failure within probably less than a minute if you do. Alright, so now I'm going to just show you guys, for those that have never seen, really all that's involved in putting in a crankshaft. I mean, the bearings are in place now, and here's the crankshaft. And I'm just going to physically pick it up, right? I wanted to point out also, see that area I just lubricated? See that? And on both sides, okay? And that's what you want to do, because that's where it meets that thrust bearing right there. I've already lubed them up. I've lubed up all the bearings. I've looked at all the places where there could be mistakes, and it's all good. All the oil holes are exposed, which is extremely important, as I told you. And we're just going to simply take and lower it down. And just, I don't want to rock it very far because I'm going to do this test. This plastic gauge test. And you can't have oil up on top here with your test. So I'm going to take this stuff right here, made by Seal Power, and I'm going to demonstrate that here in just a minute. So that's the crankshaft installation, and then we'll do the top part here after the test. Well, I may have some bad news. I am coming up with on this plastic gauge test some pretty tight bearing clearances, and I'm not comfortable with that. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I really haven't come across this. I've heard about it, I hear about it, but it's never happened to me. I've always, and you know, on the ones I checked, now I'm going to admit on camera, I haven't checked every single engine I've ever done in my life. And I mean, I've probably the majority of them I have, but there's been quite a few that I just put it together and it was fine, and I guess they were good because it never had a problem. But this one is coming up as a red flag for me, and let me show you. Let me show you what I got. Alright, so I'm going to say that the worst one, I've done it on the 2 mains and I did it on 1 rod. And the worst one, I mean right there, 1,000, that is just not enough. That's not enough. That is just not enough. That's very close to disaster. I'm going to say you'd have to be really, like here's a rod. I move this over, you can see it, sorry. There it is. And so the rod is about 2. It's about 2. Okay. You can see it's not as bad looking as where'd that other one go? Right there. It's not as bad as that. See. Alright, so this other one is not as bad as that other one back there either. But it's still about 15. So that means that it's between 1 and 2 thousandths of an inch. And you can see there what the 2 and the 3 looks like. You want it really, ideally, you probably would be good with like 2 or a little, maybe even a little looser than that. Close to 25 to 3 is actually fine. But when you're down at 1,000, like on that one main there, that's not good. That's not good. That's not good. And so anybody's curious what'll happen. Well, yeah, it'll run. It'll have great oil pressure, and it'll go down the road, and but what's happening here is these tight clearances cause heat that can't be gotten rid of very easily, especially in the higher RPMs, and reduced oil flow. Parts of the bearing may not see oil, especially when you're really hammering it, and it just gets hot, reduced oil flow, all those terrible scenarios for any engine, and you'll end up spinning a bearing. Okay, very good chance of spinning a bearing. I've heard of that. That's exactly what usually does happen. I've known engines that the machinists were like, oh yeah, it's fine, yeah, you'll be all right, it'll wear, it'll settle, everything will work itself out, and they put it on a dyno and they hammer it as a brand new engine, and it spins a bearing right on the dyno. Yeah, so I heard about one of those about a month ago. Somebody I know told me that happened. That's not, right here is a red flag. 1,000, even 1,500 is not going to work. I need 2,000 or a little better than that. So, I want to feel like, if I ran it like this, I wouldn't be feeling comfortable about 6,500 RPM shifts and all that stuff, like I usually do. I like to, feel like the engine is happy, whether it's at idle or whether it's at 7,000 RPM. I just don't want to think there's anything bad going on, and this to me is unacceptable. So it's a standard bearings, standard crank size. All this stuff is standard. You would think with 160,000 miles it'd have some wear, but it didn't. And this has been polished. This crank has been line honed the block, brand new bearings from Jags. That's where I ordered them from, and that's what I come up with, is a tight clearance on the mains at least. So I'm gonna have to take this thing back over to my machinist and let him turn it down 1,000. I think I'd feel good about that, at least on the mains anyway. So I'm at a standstill till this happens. I don't want to have to drive it around like I'm somebody's grandmother or something, because I'm afraid to spin a bearing at anything over 4,000 RPM. No, that's not how it's going to work. So all right, please like and subscribe, and I'll let y'all know how this works out. It'll be right before he leaves this garage.